Happy Friday, and welcome back to Brainscratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you for spending some time with us here today. For 27 years, a mother has been desperately searching for answers in the abduction of her daughter. With an eyewitness and reportedly hundreds of people near the site, how can the abduction of Heather Danyelle Teague stay unsolved for so long? I was contacted by someone working with Heather's mother, Sarah, and was asked to help them keep exposure raised to this case. On top of that, I've been in contact with Sarah directly and can tell you this is a mother that's never going to give up her search for the truth, the search for her daughter, and she needs some help. Not only has she requested and obtained all the police files she could on her daughter's case, even having her daughter legally declared deceased in order to be able to do so, the FBI has publicly released their file, over 340 pages on the case, and I have gone through every single one. On top of that, a phone call from a witness that literally watched the abduction from across the river is also available. Some people in law enforcement think this case is solved, while others, and Sarah's mother, aren't quite so sure. We have all that and a few strong persons of interest to discuss as we dive into everything here today and try to figure out why this case isn't officially solved and what would be the next steps to help bring Sarah answers and justice in her daughter's case. Since I'm relying on many digitized copies of paper records, we won't be leaning on the screen sharing too much for this episode. But as usual, the sources are in the description box below so you can dive in for yourself and learn more about this case. According to Wikipedia, Henderson County is in the U.S. state of Kentucky, specifically Western Kentucky, and sits on the Ohio River right across from Evansville, Indiana. As of the 2020 census, the population was over 44,000 people, and it was just a few thousand less back in the 1990s. It was Saturday, August 26, 1995, and Heather Teague started her day by stopping by at a friend's house around 4:30 a.m. Sarah tells me this is actually Heather's boyfriend at that time, a man almost twice her age that is suspected of also being a drug dealer. They had plans to go camping, but when she didn't see his car in the driveway, she decided to change up her day and go sunbathing on a beach of the Ohio River. Her boyfriend did speak to her around 10 a.m. and told her to come over for breakfast, but she said she wanted to get some sun at the river. Her boyfriend said he might join her there around noon and joked that she should be sure to leave her clothes on. Unfortunately, he wouldn't make it to the beach. They ended the call and Heather headed out. She parked, grabbed a lawn chair, and headed to the beachfront of the Ohio River. Parts of the Ohio River act as a border for the states of Kentucky and Indiana. And while Heather was on the Kentucky side, a man by the name of Tim Walthall lived in a home on the Indiana side in an area called Newburgh Beach. The beach that Heather chose is known for being a bit of a rough place, with some people tearing up the land with off-road vehicles, leaving broken bottles and even drug paraphernalia all over the place, at least according to an article from the Associated Press. Some parents forbid their children from going to the location altogether, but Heather was 23 years old, certainly old enough to make her own decisions. Tim Walthall was waiting for his wife to finish making lunch and sat down behind his telescope to look across the river. Today, he saw something very different. He was first witnessing a young woman with long dark hair sunbathing, but soon a man came out of the woods and abducted her. Tim told his wife he hoped it was her boyfriend playing a joke, but he could see that items of hers were left behind and the two weren't coming back out of the woods. He called it in to several different law enforcement agencies trying to get help. After decades and a legal battle, Sarah was able to get one of the calls publicly released, the one from the Kentucky State Police. Let's listen to that call now. Unfortunately, the closed captioning on this video leaves a lot to be desired. I'm going to try to clean up the audio a little bit when I'm editing it for you guys, but let's go ahead and give this a listen.
State Police, Dispatcher Davis.
Yes, sir. I just called the Indiana State Police. I live in Newburgh, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I was sitting at the dinner table, we got through eating dinner, and I got a telescope. I live right on the river.
Mm-hmm.
And I scanned the beach over straight across from the beach from the Lock and Dam.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a girl on the left-hand side of the trees down here, and she was sunbathing, and she was laying face down. and she had her top undone, and she was just bathing. And I was looking back and forth across the beach. I told Karen, I said, I just listened to her. I said, I just looked at the beach. And about this time, a guy come running out of the trees on the left-hand side, and he ran down and grabbed her by the back of the head of the hair and jerked her up. And she grabbed the towel, and he walked her up in the trees up in the riverbank over here. And I've been watching now for 25 minutes, and I ain't seen her come back. And all of her stuff's still sitting down there on the beach.
Where's she at on the beach, sir?
She was, where the new lock dam is?
The Newburgh locking dam? Yes, sir.
Right straight on that big long beach, and she's almost at the end of the lock wall on your side, on the Kentucky side.
End of the lock wall?
Well, I'm at the end of the lock wall. I'm right straight across on the Indiana side where the new lock wall ends.
Mm-hmm.
And she was right there at that end. Now, I swear this guy looked like he had a gun. He come down, he had a chrome-plated, I could see it glistening in the sun, and it looked like a revolver, and he snuck up behind her, and she was laying face down on the mat. And she had long hair, and he grabbed her by the head of the hair and raised her head up and showed her the gun, and then when she did, she stood up, and she grabbed the towel that was laying there, and she put it on top of her, and he marched her in front of him right up to the top of the trees.
What'd she look like?
She was, I only had like a 25 on scope, so she was Caucasian, and she had long kind of brownish black hair.
Mm-hmm. You mean long to her shoulder, to her waist, or what?
From over her back, probably.
What color was her bathing suit?
She didn't have a top on, but she had a bikini bottoms on, and it was kind of like a multicolored, flower colored. There's a lounge chair.
Okay, hold on, please. Okay, she had on a multicolored flowered bottom bikini.
Yeah. And all her stuff's still here. It's been 20 minutes ago, and she ain't come back yet. He marched her up in the trees, and at the time it happened, there was only one other group of people on the beach, and they were down the far right end.
What did he look like?
He was kind of heavy set. He just had like a blue jean cut-off pants on and tennis shoes. And I couldn't tell if he had a full beard or if he just had real shaggy hair or something over his face. But you couldn't.
What color is his hair, sir?
Kind of dark brown.
Was he white or black?
He was white.
White male?
Yeah.
And he had a gun with him?
Yes, sir.
Did he have his shirt on?
Nope, no shirt. He had what appeared to be like it was a chrome plating because it kept glistening in the sun. You know what I mean?
What's her stuff look like laying there on the beach?
She's got a lounge chair laying there, blue and white lounge chair, and her purse and stuff was laying to the left-hand side of it. And she picked her towel with her when she left because she had it in front of her hiding her breast when she walked up the beach.
What did her towel look like?
God, I don't know. A towel.
Light color, dark color?
Kind of pinkish color, I think.
And where did he take her to?
There's the trees on the left-hand side, right up from where she was sunbathing. She was out this far in. He just walked right up in the trees, and they disappeared, and I couldn't see them.
And her stuff is laying on the beach next to the end of the wall?
No. I'm at the end of the wall on the Indiana side. She's all the way across on your Kentucky side, just about where the end of the lock wall comes out, though.
Okay, the wall doesn't come out over on the other side of Kentucky?
No, it comes out on the Indiana side.
Well, I'm not familiar with the dam. I don't know.
Okay. No,
I've never been there.
On the Indiana side.
What's your name?
Tim. And the last name's Walthall, W-A-L-T-H-A-L-L.
W-A-L what?
T-H-A-L-L. She was in pretty close to where some trees come out on the end of the sand, or where the beach where the trees run out here, and she was just off to the right of that. And he would come out of the trees is where he came out of, and walked over there and ran over there actually, and she was laying face down, sunbathing, with her belly down. And he snuck up behind her, grabbed her by the head of the hair, and raised her head up, and looked at me like he showed her the gun. That's when I saw the gun glistening. And then she jumped up. When she did, she grabbed her towel, put it in front of her, and then he walked with his hands straight out in front of her and had her by the head of the hair in front of him, and he was walking. You could see the gun glistening in the sunlight. And he walked her straight to the trees.
And that's on the beach right across the river from the dam?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. We'll have someone check it.
I appreciate it. Maybe it's nothing, but goddamn, it's scared the shit out of me.
All right, sir. We'll have someone check it.
All right.
Thank you.
According to news reports, the beach was very active that day, with up to 500 or 600 people there. The FBI report states that Heather was sunbathing on an isolated part of the beach, about 500 feet away from where the majority of beachgoers were. That information, however, doesn't seem to come from this phone call. However, Tim did say that he also called the Indiana State Police. I asked Sarah if that phone call was also available, and she found out that call wasn't even taped. The notes from that call were put on Post-its, and there was no further record. Or was there? I know some of you likely keyed into the fact that Tim is saying that he's been watching for 25 minutes. Sarah was also disturbed by this, and he caught a little grief when that news was publicly reported. However, he also stated that this wasn't his first call. I've been finding references to more information that didn't come from this call, including a description of the perpetrator wearing a mosquito net or a wig. Sarah heard a tape of Tim stating those very details as well, which were also noted in the FBI report. If that information isn't coming from the Kentucky call and the Indiana call wasn't recorded, where are those details coming from? Sarah is still fighting to get all of the tapes released. She knows what she heard. She had family with her that recall that as well, so it seems there is more tape of Tim talking about this to be analyzed. For the tape we do have, I was immediately blown away at the level of detail that Tim Walthall is sharing. Is it reasonable that he would get that level of detail from a telescope that's over 300 feet, more than the length of a football field away? And why do we have some discrepancies in all these details? In that call, he says he had a 25 on his telescope, likely meaning that his view from a distance of just over 300 feet would be similar to only being 12 feet away. A lawyer working with Sarah notes that Tim Walthall actually said he called 3 different agencies, the first of which is the Warwick County Sheriff's Office. However, they can find no trace of that call. They talked to all their employees, even the chief, everyone working there at the time, and they couldn't find it. So obviously, there wouldn't be any tape from that conversation. Regardless, I'm not seeing anything in the FBI reports that are giving any consideration to Tim being responsible for Heather's abduction. It's just the discrepancies are sometimes hard to understand, and we have a mother that's been saddled with those for decades now. Law enforcement arrived on the scene, and they did find Heather's lawn chair, some clothing, and the top to her swimsuit near the water. They also saw footprints that led off into the woods. In the woods, they located her bikini bottom and towel, the only 2 items that she had covering her. Interestingly, there's no mention of her purse being found, which I believe Tim stated was at the beach. I asked Sarah about this, and she says that a purse was returned to the family, but she's not sure that it was Heather's purse at all. The wallet was missing, and there was no identifying information in it. Investigators found Heather's car, a red 2-door Nissan, and that's how they figured out that the victim was indeed Heather Teague. Heather was born on April 25th, 1972, and stood at 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighing around 90 pounds. She had green eyes and long brown hair, and according to their records, she lived in Dixon, Kentucky, though newspapers and her mother would confirm she was actually living in Clay, Kentucky at the time. Her mother told me that Heather was the oldest of 4 children. Sarah says she feels like she was born the day that Heather was born. Heather could write her ABCs by the age of 2, and even though she was shy, she really loved people. Heather was a cheerleader in school and first runner-up for Junior Miss in 1990. She continued into college, but got off track and left. Some suspected she may have fallen in with a bad crowd or possibly with bad habits. In an episode of the Paramount Plus show Never Seen Again, Sarah plainly states that she believes drugs may be involved in the abduction. However, when law enforcement did a background check on Heather, they found no arrests for her, but did note that she was reported as missing several days earlier. They cite that she has a known history of strange or erratic behavior, and they suspected possible drug use. I asked Sarah about this, and she said that 10 days before her abduction, Heather left a disturbing decoration at her mother's home. She took a wooden heart that she had given her mother, laid a doll on top of it with an electrical cord wrapped around the doll's neck, and the end of the cord was placed in a glass of water. When Heather was located, a few days after her missing persons report was filed and leaving behind the disturbing decoration, she said she was, quote, just running around. After the abduction, the Evansville Courier would report that her mother, Sarah, told them that Heather was unemployed, had been living in several different addresses recently, and was withdrawn in the days leading up to her abduction from the beach. The FBI record states that they looked into her current and past boyfriends, and didn't find anything suspicious, though one of them, likely her current boyfriend, was scheduled for a polygraph. The Associated Press would report on the search efforts, saying divers, searchers, police dogs, and a helicopter with infrared were looking for Heather. Apparently, the dogs did pick up a trail, but it went cold in the woods, leading investigators to conclude that Heather was likely removed from the scene in a vehicle. They also put the description of her kidnapper out, saying he was white, about 6 feet tall, between 210 to 230 pounds, wearing jean shorts, black athletic shoes, and had bushy dark brown hair and a beard. A search warrant would be executed a week after the disappearance, hoping to find Heather, but it came back with no result. The name of the person and that location have been redacted. The FBI records also mention a sketch and photos of a shoe print being sent to an FBI unit for analysis. Eventually, that analysis would identify it to be a print for a lacrosse Predator boot. I asked Sarah for more information. She says it was 11 inches long, which would equate to a size 10. 4 days after the abduction, 2 composite sketches of the perpetrator were created and released. One was based on Tim Wathall's information. The FBI records say the other composite came from a witness who saw an individual at the beach that day, driving a 1980 red Chevette, which is a smaller compact car. The composites are sent out to the media and soon being carried on news segments and in papers. The media would also provide a helping hand with a videotape that surfaced. Apparently, several neighbors were disturbed at all the damage happening to their crops near the beach, and one farmer decided to videotape vehicles coming and going from the area. He paid someone to film the area. The footage is shot from the inside of a vehicle as it's driving down a road, and it includes Heather's car parked, and a few hundred yards across the road is a red Bronco. Local television stations helped to zoom in on Heather's car, revealing some interesting details. The door is open, the back is open. It kind of looks like it's been gone through. And the Bronco, which also had some interesting details. Some people claim to see a person in the driver's seat, but the footage was really not in great shape. The videotape of the vehicles was also sent to Washington, D.C. for image enhancement, but the report notes that the footage was taken from the inside of a car with reflections and distortions, and that was likely going to be an issue. That being said, they believe the footage does show someone standing outside the Bronco with the door open, and possibly even Heather with her beach chair. The FBI would eventually say that the image enhancement results were minimal at best. A man named Marvin Ray Dill, who goes by Marty, is soon being looked at closely by law enforcement after several tips about him have been called in. Investigators are told via these tips that Dill resembles the sketch and owns a vehicle that is on their radar, the red Bronco. It also has a chrome luggage rack. On August 31st, less than a week after Heather was taken, search warrants were granted for Dill's vehicle and residence. The warrants note that they're specifically looking into his home, into the Bronco, Marvin Dill, Heather Teague. They're looking for a handgun, evidence of an abduction, including blood, fingerprints, hair, fibers, and other bodily fluids. Around 1 a.m. on September 1st, detectives and FBI agents arrived at his trailer to execute the search warrants. Upon arriving, they found that Dill had barricaded himself in the trailer. They tried to negotiate with him, telling him there was no arrest warrant, they just wanted to search. However, moments later, there was a gunshot. Dill's uncle, a former city police officer, ran out of the trailer and told the detectives Marty was dead. He and Marty's father had heard about the threats that Marty was making to his own life, and they were there to try to talk him down, arriving right before the detectives and the FBI. Unfortunately, they stated they had no information on if Marty did anything to Heather or where she was. They were talking to Marty primarily about his childhood while trying to find some time in there to take the gun away from him. Officers would find a suicide note, but there's no mention of it containing any information regarding Heather. They also noted a picture of a 35mm and that they were told by some tipsters Marty had one, but the gun used in the trailer appears to be a .22. They noted taking the spent shell casing and other unused rounds into evidence. Investigators had no information at the time to support that Heather and Marty Dill knew each other. However, a Kentucky State Police officer received some insights that might point to Dill being the suspect. One person called in to report that they believed the person in the sketch was indeed Marty Dill, and he had ran them off of his property recently, saying specifically that if police came to get him, he was going to end his own life. The officer received another call from a man who wouldn't identify himself. This man was told by a woman that lived in the trailer with Dill that Dill had told her, quote, "The less you know, the better," and he didn't want her involved in anything. He also again stated what he would do to himself if cops came to get him. More information came in that a woman living at the home asked Dill if he was at the beach on Saturday, and Dill became angry and told her to leave. Later news reports would state that the woman living in the trailer with him was his wife, Tracy Dill. This report also states that the Bronco was hidden in the woods behind the property. It was located and taken into the Kentucky State Police's custody for an analysis conducted by a team from the FBI. Are these the actions of an innocent man? Doesn't seem like it, but Sarah isn't convinced that Marty's the perpetrator, and the investigators tell the press that the criminal investigation isn't over. They state that they still don't know where Heather is, the Dill-related information isn't the only lead that they have, and they still can't confirm that Marty Dill knew Heather Teague at all. On top of that, they're still receiving calls about possible sightings of Heather, though none of those are confirmed. Why would Marty Dill end his own life if he didn't commit the abduction of Heather Teague? There's another possible theory. He had been busted for growing marijuana, 13 plants in total, and he made a plea bargain. They were going to sentence him to 5 years in prison, but he would be granted what's called a shock probation. Dill only served about 40 days before being released. They believed he wasn't really a threat to himself or anyone else. He had a handful of other charges previously, another one for marijuana, one for harassment, and a disorderly conduct charge. Was Marty worried that these charges were going to, at a minimum, break his probation and he'd be sitting in jail for at least 5 years, maybe more? Even his probation officer was surprised, saying Dill was a real quiet kind of guy, just kind of an unremarkable person. Was he worried about a possible civil suit, even if there weren't any criminal charges filed? But the woman related to his harassment charges tells a bit of a different story. She says that Marty was a classmate of hers in high school, and years later, he began calling her house. He would ask if her boyfriend, who was deceased, was there. Then he would laugh and hang up. She said the phone calls became more perverted and obscene over time. She also noted that he was following her, calling and talking to her about where she had been that same day and even what she was wearing. Also, his most recent marijuana charge had some troubling details as well. The Messenger-Inquirer reported that court records stated his neighbors were complaining about Marty Dill cruising around in his Bronco, soliciting young girls. When he was arrested, not only did they find the marijuana, but he had 2 loaded handguns, 2 knives, rubber gloves, duct tape, and rope. Sarah Teague had now spent 3 weeks searching for her daughter or any evidence of what happened. In mid-September, a group of 60 volunteers, including Tim Walthall, would search the beach and nearby cornfields and woods, nearly 12 square miles, looking for anything related to Heather's abduction. But, again, they came up empty-handed. Sarah told me that only 2 months into the investigation, a lieutenant told her that she needed to go on with her life, that Marty Dill abducted and killed Heather and took his secrets to his grave. But there's a bit of a problem with that story. While some pictures of Marty resemble Tim Walthall's composite sketch, Sarah believes the composite sketch came directly from Marty's driver's license after he was identified as a person of interest. According to an interview that Sarah gave reporter Brad Bird on Tri-State homepage many years later, quote, "They waited 4 days to do a sketch, and when they did the sketch, as you can see, is identical to Marty Dill's '94 driver's license. This sketch wasn't done until after the Kentucky State Police saw a video of a Bronco that belonged to Marty Dill. Marty Dill was actually bald. She then produced a photo, this photo that I'm showing you now, and continued, "This is him the day he got out of jail. His friend took him to Holiday World. He did not have all his hair, nor a beard." And Tim Walthall described him as being 6 foot, 210 to 230 pounds. Marty Dill is 4 inches shorter and 45 pounds lighter. In late October of 1995, the press reports that a grand jury hearing is scheduled, attempting to wrap up the case. It's the hope of investigators and prosecutors that the grand jury can compel some uncooperative witnesses to tell their stories. One of those people is Tracy Dill. When the grand jury convenes in November of that year, Tracy invokes her Fifth Amendment rights. She will give no additional details that can help bring this case to a close. Sarah even winds up having charges filed against her for harassing Tracy, trying to get her to tell Sarah what happened to Heather. I asked Sarah about this. She said she was just sending letters to Tracy. Eventually, those charges would be dropped. By the end of the year, the investigation seems to slow, waiting for numerous tests, including 2 specks of blood that were found in Marty Dill's Bronco, to come back. The FBI reports back that they have entered Heather's case into their database known as VICAP. In June of 1996, it's reported that one of the specks of blood is ruled out as being from Heather Teague, and the other sample is too small to get a definitive result. At the 1-year anniversary of the abduction, multiple articles talk about the family's struggle, and some specifically note there are no other suspects. One article even states that the man seen by Tim through his telescope is found to be Marty Dill. In the following years, some additional details would trickle out. There were 3 hairs recovered from Heather's towel. One was an animal's hair, but the other 2 were Caucasian head hairs. Is there some potential for DNA extraction from those small samples, maybe with newer technology today? The Bronco was also vacuumed, collecting more hair. Is Heather's DNA somewhere in those samples? In 2005, the FBI reopens the investigation, and they send several of those samples to the laboratory at Quantico for more tests. One report from 2005 states the clear issue still hounding the case to this very day. Quote, "After nearly 10 years, this matter remains unsolved. Although Dill appears to be the logical suspect, KSB is unable to provide the Teague family with undeniable proof that Heather Teague was abducted by Marvin Ray Dill Jr." But this same report then throws another interesting twist into this case. Quote, "Within the last several months, a new person of interest has been developed." WFIE would report that a 40-year-old truck driver named Christopher Below is behind bars after confessing to the murder of a young woman in Ohio, and the authorities in Heather's case are taking a saliva sample from him. He's a native of Western Kentucky, and at the time is being considered in several cases involving missing women. As a matter of fact, in 2004, he would plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter for the disappearance of a woman back in 1991. Some investigators are seeing too many similarities with Below's cases and the abduction of Heather Teague, including a very close physical resemblance between Heather and Below's known victim. Evansville Police Detective Brent Melton told WFIE that he reviewed the FBI enhanced version of the video, and he believes he sees Marty Dill sitting in the driver's seat of his Bronco, and that Marty is clean-shaven and bald. There's no wild hair that should be expected based on Walthall's description, and the detective also thinks that he sees another man ransacking Heather's car. He thinks that Dill was only an accomplice in the kidnapping and says Below is a very close match to Tim Walthall's composite sketch, particularly his torso. Sarah agrees and sent me a few photos that show that. Now, while we have some discrepancies with the tattoos shown, Sarah says that she's found records that support the tattoos were actually added after Heather's abduction. The Charlie Project reports that Bilo is known to be in the general area when Teague was abducted, but left shortly after her disappearance on the same day that Dill ended his own life. Sarah told me she understands that Bilo and Dill were former classmates from a very young age. Another FBI report from 2006 confirms that Marty's facial and head hair were not bushy at all and mostly short in length. It's reported that his head had been shaved when he was in jail and it was still a buzz cut length around the time of the abduction. He had no beard. The FBI file is also clear that there's someone that they refer to constantly as extremely upset, and this person is continuing to prompt further action from them, but the person's name is redacted. It even shows up in a letter where they're requesting that certain forensic tests be fast-tracked. We often say on this channel that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but this file makes it extremely clear that Sarah is spurring on more action and more analysis, and her efforts haven't stopped there. In 2013, she filed suit against several law enforcement agencies. She thinks there's a possible cover-up, that maybe police wanted to pin this on Marty Dill, and in doing so, missed catching the right man. And that man could be Christopher Bilo. Bilo has now served his time and is out of jail. He's never been charged in any of the other suspected disappearance or in the case of Heather Teague. And according to the Never Seen Again episode, he denies any involvement in the abduction. It leaves us really with a few theories. Is this all as simple as it was done by Marty Dill, and for some reason, the guy with the telescope that gave him the view of only being 12 feet away somehow got the description completely blown? Is there some reason why that ties into this story about a wig or some type of netting being worn over the person's face? Is that some type of justification for explaining that it was Marty Dill? Is it possibly the truth? And maybe that's why this description is being so messed up. Or was Marty really only an accomplice for Christopher Bilo? Sarah tells me that Tim Walthall picked Chris Bilo out of a police lineup in 2004, not once, not twice, but 3 times, saying that he is indeed the man that was on the beach. Of course, we also have the composite sketch, and while I don't have a photo of Dill with his shirt off, the potbelly description, I don't know that that really fits him very well. And of course, when you look at Chris, I don't know, it really seems to be a much stronger match. Outside of that, another possibility I just couldn't quite shake from my mind is who knew about her going there? Who knew that she would be alone there? And who could possibly put something into play to take advantage of that? And my brain keeps pulling back to her boyfriend at the time. Was there something going on in that relationship? Was it not great? I don't know. There's no details to really look at there. The only thing I can assume from the FBI file is he might have been the person that they polygraphed. Did he pass the polygraph and that's why it was never considered? I don't know. But her mother is certainly caught up on the possibility of there being some drug connection to this. It seems like the closest connection that she has to drugs is directly through her boyfriend, so it's another possibility in all this. What are the next steps in this case? A lot of the testing that was done has been done decades ago at this point. So the first thing in my mind, that DNA needs to be tested. As a matter of fact, or retested. On Monday, Case Cracked, we're talking about a technology that is used in cases that can pull up DNA in ways that you just can't get from a swab. Check out that episode. Maybe there's something in that type of technology that can help a case like this. Also, the video. We know that it was processed before. Video editing processes now, completely different. You can run that through an AI that can really reassemble a lot of that image and make things considerably clearer. I think there'd be a really good shot if they could get the video reprocessed. Of course, as to all the discrepancies we were talking about with the information from Tim, I really think it's a big point for Sarah to continue pressing on getting all the tapes that she can of any of that information and just trying to compare these stories and make sense out of it. There might be something in the discrepancies that can point to possibly some other thoughts about different ways to look at this case. The other thing, which I'm kind of surprised falls off the analysis in terms of the FBI file, the shoes. Just a simple check of what size shoe does both of these guys wear could be very interesting when you have that type of detail. Plus, we know from previous cases we've looked at, shoes can almost act like thumbprints. If they have severe marks in them and enough of those, you can pretty much say, okay, this is a very unique version of this shoe print. Now, the only photos that I have of the shoe prints are a copy from the FBI file. I have to believe that the negatives are out there somewhere. The original is out there somewhere. Is there enough detail in those to actually give this shoe print that extra leg of being that type of print where you could really rely on it for a very direct comparison? Outside of that, did they find this type of shoe with either, well, I don't think they really looked into Bilo that strongly to know, but we know that they went through Marty's house. Did they find that type of shoe there? Now, I asked Sarah about all this, and she tells me that Chris Bilo, according to the information that she hears, is actually known to wear a size 10. Seems like that would be a match for the boot. Info that she is also bumped into suggests that Marty was actually known to wear a size 8.5. Now, for a boot of that kind, would you wear an upsize? Possibly. It's pretty interesting, and I'm just really surprised that we didn't see more analysis around that. But I think, by far, the most important next step is what Sarah has been doing all these years. Never giving up hope and keeping up the work on this case, even through health challenges and everything else that life throws at you. Heather Teague's body has never been found, and no arrests have been made in connection to the case. Sarah says that Heather has been gone longer than she had her, but she's never going to give up searching for her daughter and the truth of what happened to her. Sarah told me she keeps Heather's memory alive with an annual scholarship in her honor that's granted at her former high school, Webster County High School in Dixon, Kentucky. The scholarship's awarded to the writer of an essay about hopes, dreams, struggles, and the most influential person in your life. Sarah includes the scripture verse Matthew 10:26 on every letter or ribbon that she hangs in Heather's honor, and it seems to pop up in conversations that you have with her as well. It says, "There will be nothing hidden that won't be revealed, and nothing covered that won't be uncovered." If you have any friends or acquaintances in Kentucky or Indiana, please share this video with them. Let's help Sarah keep Heather's name and face out there, and maybe the person with the information will find it in their heart to pick up the phone and call it in. A big thank you to the many people that support our work here at the channel. We always run these episodes with limited commercials, and we just can't do that without support. Thank you, new patrons Tara Norz, Brett McMaster, and thank you, Barbara T, for increasing your pledge at Patreon. If you'd like to help, visit lordenarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Candy Bishop recently did. Thank you all so much for your time here today. Have a nice weekend, and please come back on Monday for that episode of Case Cracked that I mentioned. I think you're going to want to hear about that technology. It's going to be right here on the Lord and Arts channel.